Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Hello and welcome to the Constant Sports Podcast. Today we're talking with Lisa Delpy Neirotti. How's it going, Lisa?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to give our listeners a little bit of background to yourself. It's very extensive. She's traveled all over the world, been a lot of places, done a lot of things. So we're excited to get into this. So we'll just start. Lisa is the director of the sports management program and an associate professor of sports management at George Washington University School of Business. She has been a professor of sport, event, and tourism management at the George Washington University for more than 30 years. Dr. Delpy Neirotti works with a number of sport event organizations, sponsors, and professional teams to conduct economic and research studies, including the Olympic Games. Here comes a long list, so pay attention. Olympic Games, World Cup, BNP Paribas Open, Citibank Tennis Tournament, Rock and Roll Marathon, the Marine Corps Marathon, college football bowl games, and among others. And then one last fun fact I thought was awesome is that she's traveled 81 countries, attended 21 consecutive Olympic Games, as well as 6 World Cups. So there's the introduction, and that's awesome. You've been all over the place, been around, and kind of been in the trenches for a while. So we're happy to have you on today.
Well, thank you. Yes, it's been a great career, and there's so many things to do in this field.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of some of the stuff I'd like to talk about today. Is you have such an extensive background, so we'll try to kind of touch on a little bit of everything. But let's just start kind of from the beginning. Why did you choose a career in sports, and kind of what led you down this path?
I was a competitive swimmer, but knew I was never going to make it to the Olympics, but I had a real love for the Olympics. I actually started in the science side. My undergrad was in exercise science. And then in my junior year, I went to the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs and worked in the lab. But at that time, believe it or not, there were only 3 interns for the whole organization. Oh. And so part of my role was to take some of the VIPs and sponsors on tours of the facility. And I realized early on that I liked being outside the lab more than in the lab. And right. So I finished up my exercise science degree, but decided I wanted to move more into the business side of sports. And back then, I mean, we're talking early, mid 80s. Sports management was just starting as an academic field and really as a profession. So I was early on in the sports management side.
Perfect. And yeah, I feel like I'm kind of the same way, as well as others I'm in the industry where, you play through high school, maybe you do some dabble in college a little bit and you realize you love sports and you just want to figure out a way to work in sports. So I'm with you there. I played a little bit of junior college baseball and realized I'm not going to the professionals, but I love the industry, so I'm gonna have to make it work. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, and from that internship, it led. They offered me an opportunity to go to my first Olympic Games, which is in 1984 Winter Olympics. And I'd love to. If this was a question and answer, I'd love to see if anybody in the audience knows where those were. The country does not exist anymore. It was Sarajevo, Yugoslavia.
Okay.
So I had a great opportunity to go over there, work my first Winter Olympic Games. And then I'm from Southern California. And so on my return, I also worked for the IOC at the 1984 Summer Games in Los Angeles.
Right.
And I've been going to each Olympic Games since as either a volunteer, a researcher, consultant. And it's been a great experience.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I can only imagine all the industry related stuff and stories you have just from all those years going to the Olympics and working those events. And then that kind of gets me into my next question. Could you tell the viewers why and what Teams is and what that's all about?
Right. So prior to finishing my PhD, I had an opportunity to travel around the world studying the Olympic movement, finding out how different national Olympic committees raised money and what they did with that money. And through that experience, I saw the economic impact of sports events in different cities because I went to events throughout these 56 countries that I visited at over 2 years. Right. And I realized the intersection of sports, tourism, and economic development. And so, I graduated, started at George Washington University, but continued to see this trend. And so I started the Teams Conference, Travel, Events, and Management in Sports, where it's one-stop shop. You have cities coming to represent all that they offer, whether it's venues, hotels, and then you have sports properties. For example, all the national governing bodies. Each national sports governing body hosts at least 17 events a year. From, you have your junior nationals, your senior championships, your masters competitions, your Olympic trials, all of these different events, and they all need hosts. They need a place to be held. Right. And there's all these cities that are vying to host these events. And so it was a way to do matchmaking, basically. So it's not only the cities, the property rights holders, and then also the vendors that are involved, whether it's people making the shirts or the medals or the timing systems. So there's anybody and everybody that's involved with organizing sports events comes to the Teams Conference.
Okay. And then is it once a year? It's once a year, twice a year?
Once a year in the fall. This year it will be in Fort Lauderdale in September.
Okay, awesome. And we'll set up links so the people that are interested or want to learn more, that they can go there and check out the website and see what it's all about for the viewers here. And then touching on mega events, as we call them, how long does it take to plan these? Can you give us a brief kind of background into the mega events and just some of the stuff you've been involved with?
So most of the time, Olympic host cities are named 7 years in advance. And Qatar was named actually 11 years in advance because FIFA ended up naming 3 host cities at once. So it's, I guess, anywhere between, and now the IOC has not yet nominated the year 2030 Winter Olympics. So they're a little behind, but it's okay because the first 2 years of a host organizing committee is really just trying to get their funding, their management in place. And then, the 4 years leading up to it is when all the work is really done. Again, they need that 7 years, though, if a lot of new facilities need to be built.
Yeah, construction, all that.
Exactly. So, and as there's this whole time frame with a whole project management outline of what milestones have to be completed. Obviously, tickets start selling a year to a year and a half out from the games. And so you have to, backtrack, and you have to have what facilities and how many seats and, how many tickets can you sell. So all of that needs to be in place before you can start selling. Security, that starts early, and each city has a different level of security needs. But, there always is 3 rings of security around a major event. And, again, each host city has uniquenesses. So Qatar, unlike other World Cup hosts, they had all the teams in one location within an hour. They had 8 different stadiums. And so everything went really well. I mean, I was very impressed with how the Qatar Organizing Committee managed it. The one thing that they kind of failed on was they didn't have an Olympic lane, because in the past, when a host city for World Cup, they usually only had 1 match at a time. It's like having just 1 football game on Sunday. And so maybe a host city would have a World Cup match every 3 days. But here they had 8 matches going in the early stage, and they had great metro access and bus systems. But a lot of people also in Qatar drove their own personal cars. For the Olympic Games, you're not allowed to have personal cars. And so they didn't do a good public announcement encouraging people don't take your own personal cars, because then there was a lot of personal cars coupled with the buses and the VIP cars. And so it wasn't express, even though it would be an express bus. But that's lessons learned, because in the past World Cups, you didn't need an express lane because it wasn't multiple matches at the same
time. Yeah, working at the same type of
So,
venues.
you know, we learn as we go along. And I did see later on in the matches, they started asking people, please don't drive.
Right.
But
That's what I was going to say. Were they like, hey, you know, no cars, stop driving? And it kind of sounds like they figured it out a little bit.
They had a huge parking, spot for all the personal cars that come in. Again, for mega events around the Olympics, like Super Bowl or Olympic Games, and there's no parking lots for security reasons, but also transportation reasons. They force everybody onto mass transit.
Right. And then you mentioned a little bit about the 2030 games. So I was just curious, I was reading some stuff about Salt Lake was kind of in the running, and is it common because they've had it before? So is it common for a city to have one of these mega events twice in kind of like a lifetime, you could say?
Yes, it's common, and it's going to become more common with the world that we live in terms of sustainability.
Right.
And Salt Lake has excellent venues. They've kept those venues up from the 2002 games. They are ready to host anytime the IOC wants to bring the games back to Salt Lake. I'm going to be honest that leading up to the games, I was a little questionable about how they were going to go, but they put on excellent games, well organized, fun, and I think they would do a great job. I think the question now, from a US OPC perspective and a LA 28 perspective, is it feasible? Is there enough funding to support both the summer games in 28 and a winter games in 30? Those are back to back. Now, we have had experiences where we held similar to what we're doing here, we're doing the 26 World Cup and then the 28 Olympics.
Yep.
We did do the 94 World Cup and the 96 Olympics. So that's not as challenging. But, when you think about these Olympic sponsorships are very expensive, are we going to be able to support both a winter and summer back to back plus a World Cup? So it'd be
jam-packed.
World Cup, 28 summer, 30 winter. And then what's that look like to the rest of the world? We also have to be considering about, is it just going to be a US centric Olympics? Right. So all these different discussions, but if there's no other bidders, we're ready to host.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're ready to rock and roll. And just touching on a little bit about the business side, when people make their pitches, what kind of packages do they put together? Is it, we have transportation set up, we have this funding, what kind of goes into that?
So it's been a change over the last 5 years about how host cities bid. In the past, it used to be a very public, open event where you had to put together a 600-page document showing all your details. Now what they do is they invite any host city that's interested to come to Lausanne and sit down and meet with the IOC to discuss how these Olympic Games fit into their long-term strategy for that city. So it's more integrated, so we don't have as many white elephants, right? In the past, maybe the president or somebody had this idea, let's host the Olympic Games, but didn't think it through for the long-term sustainability of whatever venues and infrastructure is needed. So now the first step is to sit down, really discuss how these games will benefit both the city and the Olympic movement, and see if it's a good partnership, and then move forward with looking at all the details and do they have the right infrastructure and support to make it happen.
Great, great. And then I've seen a lot of, articles and whatnot with the cities, the surrounding areas after these mega events happen. And, some of the times the facilities aren't used. Are those things considered too, where they'll look at that and say, if a possible city could be, host a big event, but then in 5-10 years that they're just vacant. Does that, I'm assuming that kind of goes into the pitch and stuff like that.
Well, all of these cities come in with this great plan
Right.
and
Yeah, of
said,
course.
oh, yes, we're going to be doing all these things with our venues. Now, in the case of Brazil, when they bid, the economy was good. They looked like they were turning around in terms of crime and, getting their country more professional, I guess you would say.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, the downturn happened, and they had plans to reduce the venue sizes and to reuse the venues like Qatar is saying they're going to do. But that takes money to disassemble the venues. Right. And to ship them and to do the things that they said they were going to do. And they barely had any money to do anything at the end. Like Paralympic Games came after the Olympics, and they really did not have any resources to support Paralympics. So those venues are just deteriorating, unfortunately. Most of them are not in use and not doing anything. They had plans to make schools out of them and do some other really great things. But when you come to like a United States or a London or countries that have a great sports history and activities, those facilities, most of them are already built, and then they're being reutilized.
Right.
London, they built a whole new city, East London. And, I went back recently, and all the Olympic Village that they built are now housing units, and the mall that was there is still very active. So you have some good examples, and you have some examples that are not so good.
Right, right.
Greece, the one great legacy is the metro system and the new airport. So they put in an airport infrastructure, because Athens really needed a metro system, and the Olympic Games pushed it and made it happen. They had been talking about the metro system for years, but without the games that pushed it, it wasn't going to happen. But on the other hand, then they had these facilities that are just sitting in ruin right now.
Yeah. That's kind of a fascinating part of the Olympics and these world events, mega events, is kind of what happens after. And like you were mentioning, there's, some cities where you kind of come at like a real estate point of view, the business side of view, if you can kind of flip them into, repurposing them and making rides out of things. And I've been to the Salt Lake one, and I think it's like one of the downhill skis. It's like a ride now. So they kind of repurposed it for that thing. And as the East London, as you were mentioning. So I think it's all about how you can come in after and repurpose it, and it's to kind of build off what's already there, of course.
And, the cost, I just want to say this real quickly, that Sochi, they say, $50 billion. You have to understand that, first off, half of that was graft money. They paid off everybody. But then, okay, 25 billion. What they did was they built a ski resort. Think about building Vel Ski Resort or Breckenridge. They literally they had one run up on the hill that you basically had a helicopter to. And somehow the IOC gave it to Russia, to Sochi. And they literally had to build a whole metro line. They built a whole ski resort. They built all new hotels. They had to do a water treatment plant. They had to do an electric grid. So that amount of money was not the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games was, 5 billion. But most of that was paid for from TV rights and sponsorship and all. It was all the infrastructure. So here in the United States for the Summer Olympic Games, we're not building anything, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have some surplus, which like in 84, there was $200 million surplus that's still in the 84 foundation. That's serving with grants to provide sports access for disadvantaged youth in the LA, Southern California region.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, that's this has been great so far, but I want to transition a little bit, and I would talk about this for hours. Transition a little bit to the sports management degree there at George Washington. So, why should a prospective student look that wants to get into the sports industry look to get a master's or a secondary degree in the first place?
Well, as a marketing professor, our unique selling proposition, USP, is that we're in the business school. And we were the first sports management program in the business school. I started in 1991, and we have just progressed. We've always been adding courses based upon what's the trends. So we were one of the first to add sports social media. We were the first to add data analytics. You know, we keep ahead of the trends, and I think that's unique. So we're in the business school, we're not in continuing education, and you can get from your MS, you can continue on to do your MBA, but you can also get specialized graduate certificates in whether it's human resource or digital marketing or international business consulting. So you can specialize within your sports management degree, some really focused business programs.
Really, right.
And then we also have over 500 alumni actively involved. And I stay in touch with most of them, and they're great resources for our current students. So we have a direct pipeline into sports teams and leagues and agencies and media companies that is really powerful. And finally, we offer unique opportunities that not all schools offer. I've been bringing students since 1992 to the Olympic Games and World Cup. So our students get to go over and have hands-on experiences, meeting executives, getting experience, and enjoying the mega event.
Right.
We just came back from Qatar, where 16 students and I were volunteering for the tournament.
Awesome.
In addition, we also do
Yeah.
career trek. So we take students to New York and Chicago and different places to get them exposed. Again, mostly our alumni are hosting us in these cities.
Awesome. Great. It sounds very flexible and kind of, being adaptive and working within in the industry. And you kind of touched on it a little bit but what's kind of your favorite aspect of the program? And what of the students that have come back, the alumni, said their kind of favorite part of the program is?
So for me, it's really following the alumni to their success. I mean, I just love to see students get that first job, and then they come back and ask me how to renegotiate or move on to their next position. And so you can imagine, over my 32 years at GW, we have many that are presidents now, vice presidents, general managers, et cetera. And that's really what I enjoy most. I also enjoy staying up on the trends, as I said, whether now it's a lot of technology, how do we adapt, and how are fans adapting? The big question on everybody's mind is, how do we get fans engaged, both in the stadium and outside the stadium? Because without fans, it's going to be hard to get sponsors and keep the revenue going. I start my class off by saying, how do you spell sport? M-O-N-E-Y. It's all about money. If somebody comes in and thinks it's all about the scoreboard, it's really not. It's about revenue, because without revenue, you can't pay those high salaries to those players. And then we also do a sport philanthropy certificate program. That's a non-degree program. Our students can take it. And that's where I enjoy using sport for social good, whether it's using sports to help young people stay in school, or to learn about health, or to conflict resolution. I've gone to different countries around the world and use sport for conflict resolution.
Okay, awesome. And I'm interested in that last part. How have you seen the use of sport within conflict resolution? How's that come about?
So, I mean, you can think of Israel and Palestine, right? So we go over, we play basketball, and the teams are mixed with both kids from Israel and Palestine. So they're not competing against each other; they have to work together. And it was just Qatar was a perfect example. The media was really negative. A lot of media was negative. We were over there hand in hand. I was working next to Iranians, Russians, Afghanistan, like people where there's been tension with US. I can tell you, we were like buddies, and we were laughing about how, what's the headline today? And, US played Iran, and everybody was just loving sport. So sport really does bring people together. And I know that power from the Olympics, from the World Cup, and I like to bring it down to the local area. I mean, to the local grassroots.
The communities. And yeah, I agree. I think sports is just a great, equalizer, brings everyone, like you're saying, everyone together, and doesn't matter about anything else. But, when you're in the stadium rooting for the team, it's also, you're all like, on one team essentially. And, that's just awesome about sports.
In my work in Africa, it's empowerment of women, it's education of HIV, AIDS, trying to eliminate that or get testing. So sport does bring people together for education, for health, and for conflict resolution.
Yep, beautiful. I agree 100%. That's awesome what you and the alumni are doing, and we'll look forward to following that.
I did want to mention where our alums are. I mean, I could tell you they're in, all the team, all the teams, NBA, MLB, soccer, etc. in DC, Philly, New York. We got Boston, LA, New York, Chicago, Cleveland. I mean, they're kind of all over.
Yep.
But then they're also with the leagues. We have representatives at all of the 5, leagues, plus NWSL, and a lot of conferences, collegiate conferences and universities, and Excel, sports marketing, Octagon, Wasserman, WMG, that's Endeavor. So they're in agencies of CAA, and then they're also with organizations like the International Olympic Committee, the USOPC. And so we do really focus on what is your interest and how can we best prepare you and connect you with the right people for your interests.
Wonderful. And then speaking about, connecting with the right people and connections and whatnot, I'm assuming the professors at the program are very engaged, with the students and the other faculty. So can you give us a little background on the professors, what they do, how involved they are, etc.?
Well, I'm so excited. For years, we've had Meredith Geisler as an adjunct who came in and taught a course or so, but I finally pulled her away from the industry. She's had 40 years experience being a publicist for, some of the top athletes out there, including Grant Hill and many others. And so she is now full-time with us and teaching our sports media and communications and other classes. But you can imagine, as a publicist for top NBA other athletes, her Rolodex, I'm outdating her phone, thousands of great contacts, coupled with myself. And then we have Ellen Zavian for sports law, who's was the first female agent back in the 80s, and she's been with us for over 25 years now. So you can see the people who come to work at GW, they have practical experience, plus they have stayed with us. We don't turn over a lot because we want our alum to be able to come back and work with us continually. And that's really important for us, that career development for life. Yeah. And then on top of that, we have some new faculty that actually were alums, but now, like, he's the senior capologist and contract manager for the NFLPA. He went through our program, and then he went out into the workforce, and then he comes back and teaches our sports finance and capology class. And I can tell you that's probably one of the favorites, because I think we all dream about being a GM or a president of a team one day. And the students get to live that out in this class. They do contract negotiations, and they learn about how teams have to manage their finances in order to pay the athletes what they want.
Right. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. And like you're saying, I feel like everyone has their favorite team, favorite player. And as soon as their contract comes out, you look it up and you see how much they're getting paid per year. But then at the same time, that team, that organization is a business. And so they have to crunch the numbers and make sure, their business is still looking good and they can pay them and they got bills and stuff to pay. So that capology class sounds fascinating.
And then our sports analytics class is run by Scott Lewis, and he's worked, starting off with the NBA, and then he went to the Washington Nationals, and he went to DC United, and he went to the Orioles. Now he's with Zoomp, a vendor that crunches numbers for sports organizations and sponsors. And so, obviously his experience and is invaluable.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's quite the roster there. And that's just the extensive background. And I like the practical, knowledge to bring into. And I've seen that, my time here in the industry, it's kind of like I like having the stories, the background, and also like the experience, so that I can kind of picture, get the real world experience. What's it like, building my career? What can I expect? Things like that going through.
And then Zane Jaffrey teaches our basketball analytics. Our students have indicated that they're most interested in basketball. I mean, some are interested in everything, but basketball was a favorite for many. So we brought him in. He's a data scientist for the Washington Wizards on the player side. And so he works with our students in basketball analytics. We also offer an esports class. We offer, this year, we offered management of global football, because more and more people are interested in soccer and football. Yeah. And that coincided with our World Cup course, our trip. And so we brought in people who just bought teams over in England. We had youth soccer representation all the way up to MLS discussions. City Group. One of our alums is the person who negotiates all Citigroup's contracts, player contracts. So that means that they have 9 teams now, Citigroup, 9 teams, and all the contracts for players have to go through him.
Okay.
So he's busy and probably has touched more player contracts than anybody else in terms of football, soccer.
So, yeah, I'm with you. He's probably got a lot of things to do during the day, it sounds like.
Never a dull moment there.
No. And then as you and your team are looking through different applicants and whatnot, what are some things, some experiences, some skills that when you're looking at that separate the accepted candidates from those who unfortunately aren't accepted?
During COVID, we got away from the GRE or GMAT. So now we're really looking at your GPA and work experience. And, we will take into consideration if your GPA was lower, but you've had great work experience, then we kind of do a sliding scale there. So, a strong GPA and work experience are the 2 factors that we look at most.
Okay, got it.
Work experience, I'm fine with seeing that you worked at McDonald's, because it shows you have, work ethic.
Yeah.
But because being in the sports industry is not all fun and games. You're working weekends, you're working nights, you're carrying boxes, you're schlepping things. I'm still volunteering, I'm still working in the industry. And, you've got to be strong, and you have to be healthy, and you have to be willing to put the work in.
Right. I think something that's forgotten a lot is when people work in the sports industry, if you're working at a game, you're not watching the game per se. You're working the game, so you're in the back lifting things off crates or moving things, and you hear the crowd roaring, but you have no idea, what's going on. And he was winning. You're just so locked in. And moving things around and working. So I think that's sometimes lost with those that want to be in the sports industry rather.
And I always, tell people it's an endurance sport. I mean, there are long days. Even if you're working for an agency, you're often traveling all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great career if you have that aptitude.
Right. I agree. And then what does the future look like for the GW program? No secrets, I guess, if you want to keep them, but some different program, or classes, things like that, that are coming in the future.
Well, there's a lot of jobs in sports and tech. We're automizing a lot of activities right now in sports, both on the playing side and the business side. And so, a crossover of engineering and sports is important, knowing coding, but if that's kind of the tech side, but the other side is graphic artists. I encourage all of my students to know Photoshop, to really be able to create, whether it's posters or videos or social media posts, engaging social media posts, because there's a lot of jobs out there that are looking for those type of skill sets. The other one is Excel and Tableau. So really knowing how to use Excel formulas, know Excel backwards and forwards, and then be able to show, illustrate the data in Tableau.
Got it. That's very useful, and especially for the listeners that are going into the industry. Those are some things, some skills. If you have, you want to sharpen, and if maybe you don't have, you want to look into going forward.
And they're all free. You can learn it on, Lynda or online. There's a ton of courses that you can take. Google Analytics, you can get even like a certificate online for that. Yeah. So build those hard skill sets that we don't really teach in the classroom. Build those outside of the classroom to supplement your resume.
Right, to kind of bring more value. I think that's always important, bringing value, adding value in your current role, and that just shows that you're willing to work and you have the necessary skills to fulfill different jobs and things like that.
Differentiates you from everybody else that is a generalist. Like, what are you really good at?
Right. And then moving forward, how can students find out more about the program? Is it and maybe a little bit about the application process and the admission process?
Okay. Well, I welcome everybody to contact me at Delpy, DELP, as in Peter Y, at gwu.edu. We also have a website, which is too long for me to say here, but hopefully
I'll add it. Yep, I'll add it.
But it's business.gwu.edu/ms-sports-management. And I'm also on Twitter at GWMNGT. And I think I'm on LinkedIn too. So join me at any of those locations.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll add those in so the viewers can check it out. And one more thing you were about to add?
Yeah. I want to also offer any of the listeners here a discount to the Sports Industry Networking and Career Conference, the SYNC conference, February 24th to 25th in Washington, D.C. We bring in 100 industry executives and offer one-on-one interviews and lunch roundtable networking, a reception, and panels and keynotes. So, we've got the owner of DC United. We have Michael Rabel with PLL. We have just a number of other exciting executives that will be joining us, and we welcome you to join. I can give a code for this podcast and just mention, you can even email me and mention that you listened and you'd want the discount for the conference.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll add that in, and to the viewers, we'll add it to the weekly newsletter and things like that, and we'll push that out there for everyone. And just to wrap up, Lisa, I appreciate the time you spent with us today, and the viewers are they're going to learn so much from this podcast. So we can't wait. But I just want to wrap up with a no huddle. So I'm going to ask you a few questions here, and just kind of the first answer that comes to your mind, all kind of sports related and based upon your experience. So, what country hosted the best World Cup?
I enjoyed France '98. Just the French are so passionate and a great organization overall.
Wonderful. And then what's your favorite quote or motto?
Say yes, similar to just do it. But if somebody offers you your job or offers you your opportunity, just say yes, because you never know where it's going to go. Even if you don't think you may have that right skill or you think it's not worth your time, do it.
Yep. Agree 100%. And then out of the 81 or so countries you visited, what's your favorite country?
I divided up pleasure and education. So I love Spain and Brazil. Education is China. And then most recently, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is growing in sports. And so I'm doing a research study there, and I've enjoyed visiting that country and learning more about its growth opportunities.
Wonderful. And then what's your favorite book that you've read?
Shoe Dog, all about Phil Knight. And I've always been fascinated with the sporting good industry. Up the road from Washington, D.C. is Under Armour. In fact, Kevin Plank's mother went to George Washington University. So I really like to see, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And so I really like to see how these shoe companies or businesses were developed.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating.
So fast.
Yeah. And then how do you stay up to date with the industry, different articles, books, websites? What do you use to stay up to date?
Yeah, obviously it's Twitter and LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I like to just keep track of where people are moving, what are they doing. Twitter sometimes gets a little bit overloaded, but it's always good to keep up with those. And I try to follow as many people as possible.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Well, that wraps up this episode of Constant Sports Podcast today. And we really appreciate you stopping by and giving us your experiences and some stories you had. And if you have any kind of last words or last remarks, the floor is yours.
Well, I look forward to hearing from some of the listeners. I was open to further discussion and maybe see you at SYNC or in the sports management program at George Washington University.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Lisa, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll make sure to send out those codes and connect people with the right people in sports. And we're looking forward to following your career and seeing the other countries and World Cups you'll be able to visit.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye. Hey, you know what they say, it's all about who you know. And now, you know Lisa Delpy Neirotti.